Hello everyone. It's Saturday and we are just doing a chill watch-along stream. As I said during the finale, sort of God of War Ragnarok, I said that after finishing the game I was going to go back and I was going to do everything I could do in the game that was worth charting, which ended up just being pretty much everything that was going to be a platinum trophy anyway. So just to show you that I did all the other nonsense in this game, there you go, platinum. I'm now part of the top 8.9% of players who have bothered to play this game, which I guess makes me, 91.1% better than all the other people who play this game eventually. I guess that makes me an ultra fan. It's funny, actually, like, the last thing I did was beat the Berserker King, who was a good challenge, by the way. And, the last thing I did, he was definitely harder than the Valkyrie Queen, for sure. And the last thing I did was I just missed this one random side quest that involved just picking up a random thing in the middle of nowhere. None of the side quests were really that interesting or relevant. There was one where you do end up discovering where they actually hid Tyr, and it makes a lot more sense. But there's not really any real resolution from it. It's like, oh look, it's Tyr. And Tyr's like, yup, it's me. Anyway, I want to be left alone now. And that's it. They're like, okay. And then they just walk away. It's like, wow, amazing. Amazing. And where does this really rate the game in terms of the final score, the final thoughts, and all that? In terms of putting things on my scale of relativity. Well, before we dip into that, I figured it would be fun if I gave you guys my thoughts on God of War 2018, which is going to follow up the recapitation that I did, which is the deep cut video. So normally I don't really show these publicly, but at the, just repeating myself, I'm going to just go ahead and play it here. We'll listen to it. It's like 24-25 minutes. And that pretty much will say my thoughts on 2018 other than just overt review. And then after that, we'll just go into my final thoughts on Ragnarok, which I think really depend on the perspective of 2018 that you have going into it. And then after that, what we're going to do is I want to understand perspectives alternate to my own. So we're mostly going to watch a couple videos of videos people recommended to me, of reviews of people that reviewed God of War Ragnarok and really put out apparently well laid out points in support of it. Which is what I wanted. I didn't want just a fanboy video of somebody gushing and slobbering all over this game. That's useless. So I had 3 recommendations. One was Video Game Donkey, the other was The Act Man, and the other was Under the Mayo. So we'll go ahead and watch those videos after that. And we'll comment on it. We'll see if we agree or if we roast on it. But other than that, this is just going to be a chill time. How much did I miss? Not much. I literally just got started. I mostly was just laying out the framework and expectation for this thing. I just wanted to flex and show that I wasn't bullshitting when I said I'd get the platinum before the next stream, and so there we go. So now you know that I am 91.1% more accurate in my words and statements about God of War Ragnarok than other people. Like that actually means anything. I'll take that seriously. Nice platinum money. How does it feel? Wasn't worth it. Getting the platinum took about 20 hours. I think final time was like 46 and a half hours, which is almost exactly 20 hours from where we ended, which was like 26 and change hours. And it was a different experience. It was like playing one of those classic 90s collectathons with a mascot where you just go in this big world that's only there to hold collectibles for you to just mindlessly go off and gobble up and complete. And there's no other purpose for this entire area. It was kind of like playing that. It was very antiquated in its design and not very fulfilling. Oh, there's a weird mosquito there. Sorry. I had to peek the mic. I had to clap a mosquito. And I can definitely say I now feel more confident in my final score for this game that we'll get to after we listen to my thoughts on 2018. And then I'll give my thoughts, and then we'll move into the video section. So if you've never seen a watch along, I'm not really going to be playing. I'm mostly going to be talking for a few hours, and this also is a conversation. It's not just me talking to you guys. Feel free to talk to me back. I'm going to be paying more attention to chat. You'll be on screen so I can easily see you. So let's switch off real fast. Hold on, I'm just switching over to my desktop. I will say though, in terms of fights, the Berserker King was definitely the most challenging fight for the same reasons that the Valkyrie Queen was the most challenging fight, because he combos all the moves. But it still came down to spamming runic attacks and light attacks. So you can in fact get through the entire game doing nothing but spamming runic attacks and light attacks. That's all you need to do to beat this game. Spam runic attacks and light attacks, and you win this game. At every single level, that's all I did. And there were some where it's like, okay, that really wasn't the most optimal strat, but it still worked. Alright, this is going to be a sneak peek. If you are subscribed, Idris, you probably saw this in your feed earlier, but there's also a link in the description for all the other ones if you want to watch past RECAPitation deep cuts. These are just mostly my stream of consciousness thoughts / review on a game. This is the closest you're going to get to a formal review on a game for any game that I ever did a RECAPitation on. So if you ever want to know my real thoughts on it, it's like this. It's very stream of consciousness. There's a loose structure where I kind of talk about the my general history of it, the aesthetics, the characters, music, pacing, because I think all those are important pillars that most reviews don't cover, that are more interesting to discuss, that mostly all games share. But without further ado, let's listen to myself talk for about 25 minutes. Hello, fellow adventurers, and welcome to another edition of RECAPitation Deep Cut. I may or may not interrupt myself if I feel like adding to something I'm already saying. We'll see. Hey Lynn, how is it going today? Bradley, how's it going? Me, Oni Black Mage. So, God of War 2018. Why am I covering this game? Well, in the spirit of so many recaps since, honestly, the very first one, this one was made out of pure spite. God of War has actually been in my queue for a while, but just being honest, it was a really low priority. But when I was playing the sequel, Ragnarok, I watched their recap because I, like so many, just wanted a quick refresher on a game that we played 4 years ago. But then I saw how incredibly brief, low detail, and informative it was. It just flat out sucked. And then I decided then and there to just make my own recap, which I hope helps a lot of people. It also helps me because now I have a fresh perspective on Ragnarok coming from, 2018, and it helps with direct comparisons. Otherwise, to set up how I feel about God of War in general, I've played the numbered installments and liked the first game, but felt 2 was kind of worse than 1 in many ways, and 3 was even worse than that. Now, why do I feel that way? Because especially like God of War 3 was very well received. It's because I felt God of War was such a landmark game at the time, pushing not only action games in such a way that many games would, later imitate or be inspired by. It also popularized quick-time events and combat for sure, but it also brought with it such savage violence alongside epic set-piece battles against mythical names and beasts, while balancing a well-told story in a plot line that kind of respected classical Greek tragedy like playwrights. It knocked it out of the park with that balance, and unfortunately the sequels doubled down on the action and violence and pretty much scrapped the story. Like, the balance was lost at that point, I felt, and now that I've cracked this series, I may just, revisit them later to see if I feel the same ways, I don't know. When 2018 was first announced, I was highly skeptical and not at all excited. What I wanted was a return of balance, and more really, an improvement of action, exploration, and storytelling. And you know what? I got exactly that. A very good balance of action, exploration, and storytelling, and I was surprised and delighted. I mean, I was negative and scrutinizing as always going into this, and this game just kind of turned it all around. But I'm only so positive on where it came from, as there are still issues I have where it is. But let's take a closer look. So aesthetically, I personally never found Norse mythology all that visually interesting. I don't know much about the mythology myself, but pretty much all media that I've seen shows it, just being like normal Viking or Nordic villages, and just inhabited by extraordinary people. Just compared to like Egyptian, Hindu, or even Greek mythology, and Norse just seems boring to me. God of War combats this in some sense, as while they do go with a photorealistic art style for its people, which, looks really good and detailed, it still isn't visually interesting. It's just eye candy for graphics cores who just fangasm over visual fidelity. So instead, they lean hard on fantasy architecture of non-humans like elves, dwarves, and giants to really carry the environments in a lot of places. It's basically the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings approach. Humans are relatively boring outside of a few cities, while pretty much everybody else has these huge, amazing cities and structures. Even the magical nature of Freya's home just enjoys these vibrant colors, which really set it apart from the boring grays and browns everywhere that is so common in photorealistic games. So what we get are a lot of huge statues, rooms ornate with carvings and trimmings, and just plenty of times where they play with the lighting. It works for the most part in a couple of areas, but most areas, and even some realms, just kind of look generally generic within expectations, like Helheim, Muspelheim, and I guess Niflheim. Those don't really scream their names in any iconic nature, where it's like, oh man, I remember this amazing thing in this one realm. You don't really get that. They do have an interesting gimmick that you're going to remember them for, but they're really, like, the realms are just there as background to what you're actually there to do. Helheim is there because Kratos had to go to the underworld in a God of War game. Did they really need to specifically get the heart of the Keeper of the Underworld to break Atreus' fever? Really? I don't know, that seems awfully specific, and not really something most people would even have the opportunity to know. You see, theming should be more than just writing convenience. Niflheim is foggy, sure, but at least that played into the mechanics of this giant death maze with traps, deadly encounters, and timers. Honestly, I thought this was, really cool side content and glad they didn't really force it into the story. Muspelheim, however, is definitely just background, as they just use the idea of Surtur and him making weapons to be the inspiration of a ladder gauntlet. Like Niflheim is just scratching the surface of those who like obstacle courses, like that's the nature of Niflheim, but then Muspelheim was just for people who really like the combat of this game. Like, it's good side content even if the area was just not all that special. Like I said, the idea of a trial is not really exclusive to Surtur and Muspelheim, so the theming here, it's just, it's really just more convenience. Now, for characters, this is where this game knocked it out of the park, by making this a character-driven story with its main cast, which is Kratos and Atreus, but also Freya in a very large part, even though you don't play as her, and then Baldur as the antagonist, who rightfully so is in your face. And then we have a tight, purposeful cast that all tie into the layers of the central message of this game, which, as Kratos often says, be better.